Don't come back until you learn some respect." Then he threw her. 7 years old, barefoot, no coat, 17 below zero, Christmas Eve in Montana. She hit the snow and heard the deadbolt slide home behind her. She pounded on that door until her knuckles went numb. Her mother was inside. The lights were on. Nobody opened it. She walked until her legs quit. She went down in a drainage ditch off Route 11, and the snow started covering her, and she closed her eyes, still holding the only thing she had left, a broken piece of her dead grandmother's angel. That was the moment a Hell's Angels biker drove past. He almost didn't stop. If this story hits you in the chest, subscribe, hit the bell, and drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. Dale Pruitt had been drinking since noon. That was not unusual. What was unusual on this particular Christmas Eve of 2009 was the specific quality of his mood. Not the loud, bellowing kind of drunk that filled a room and pressed itself against the walls and made Carol flinch at sounds before they happened. This was the quiet kind, the still kind, the kind that sat in a recliner and watched a football game without watching it and let its eyes travel, slowly and deliberately, to a small plastic Christmas tree leaning slightly to the left in the corner of the trailer living room. And then back. And then to the tree again. Lily Mae felt it before she understood it. She was 7 years old and she had lived with Dale Pruitt for 3 years, and she had developed, in those 3 years, a set of instincts that no 7-year-old should need. She could read the temperature of a room the way farmers read weather. Not from instruments, but from the feeling in the air, from the particular pressure of silence, from the angle of a jaw or the stillness of a pair of hands. Right now, her instincts were screaming. She was on the couch with her knees drawn up, making herself as small as she could manage, which was already pretty small. She was watching the Christmas tree the way she watched it every night since she'd set it up, with a private, careful love that she had learned not to show too openly, because the things you loved openly were the things that could be used. She had found the tree at a neighbor's donation pile 3 weeks ago, $2 in change scraped from her coat pocket. She had carried it home 4 blocks, holding it upright because 2 of the stand's 3 legs were bent. She had spent a whole weekend decorating it, paper chains, popcorn strings she'd made with a needle from her mother's sewing kit, and at the very top, held in place with a twist of wire she'd found behind the trailer, a glass angel. Her grandmother Ruth's angel. Ruth had died in July. She had left Lily exactly one thing in a note folded inside a birthday card that had arrived 2 weeks after the funeral. For my Lily, angels watch over the ones they love. The angel was the only thing in the trailer that was entirely hers, the only thing that connected her to someone who had looked at her with pure love and no conditions attached. And Dale was looking at it now. Lily. His voice came out flat, low, almost gentle. That was the worst kind. Yes, Dale, come over here. She stood up. She crossed the room. She stood in front of him, her hands clasped in front of her, and she waited. Behind her, she could hear her mother Carol moving carefully in the kitchen, each sound deliberate, measured, a pot set down instead of placed, footsteps that were barely footsteps. Dale looked at the tree. He looked at Lily. He looked at the tree again. You made that? Yes. The paper chains? Yes. The popcorn? Yes. All by yourself? Yes, Dale. Something shifted behind his eyes. She watched it happen. It looks like something a kindergartner made, he said. Lily said nothing. She had learned that nothing was sometimes the only safe answer. I'm embarrassed, he said. For you. I look at that and I'm embarrassed for you. I'm sorry, she said. Go take it down. He waved one hand at the tree. Take down the garbage. Leave the... He paused. Leave the angel. I want to look at the angel. Lily walked to the tree. She began carefully removing the paper chains. She folded them as she went, pressing each fold with her thumbnail, trying to keep them neat. Carol, Dale called, without raising his voice. Bring me a beer. Carol appeared in the kitchen doorway. Her face was careful, neutral, arranged into the particular blankness of someone who has practiced making herself invisible at close range for a long time. "Supper's almost ready, Dale." "I didn't ask about supper," he said. "I asked for a beer." Carol went back to the kitchen. Lily kept folding paper chains. She did not look at the angel at the top of the tree. She did not look at Dale. He stood up. She heard the recliner creak. She heard his footsteps, heavy, slow, deliberate, cross the linoleum. She felt his shadow fall over her and the tree. "You know what your problem is?" he said. She didn't answer. "You think things belong to you," he said. "You think you live in your own little world, and you get to have your own little things, and nobody touches them. That's your problem." "Dale," Carol said from the kitchen doorway, her voice thin as paper. "Supper." "Go back in the kitchen, Carol." A pause. "Go back in the kitchen." The door to the kitchen closed. Dale reached past Lily and took the angel from the top of the tree. She felt the displacement of air when his arm moved. She heard the small, metallic sound the wire made when it gave way. She did not turn around. "This is what you're protecting," he said. "This ugly old thing." "Please don't," Lily said. The words came out before she could stop them. "That was my grandma's. Please, Dale." He looked at her, and something in his face settled into place, something that had been choosing its shape all afternoon. And she knew, with the absolute certainty of a child who has studied this face for 3 years, that it was already decided. That it had been decided before she said please, before she even stood up from the couch. He held the angel out at arm's length. He looked at her. He held it over the linoleum floor. "No," Lily whispered. "Please." He opened his hand. The sound it made was very small, a crack, bright and final, like something that had held together for a long time and then simply stopped. Lily was on the floor before she understood she had moved. Her hands were sorting through the pieces, the wing, the halo, the base with her grandmother's handwriting still faintly visible in blue ink. She was crying. She didn't know when she had started crying. "Stop," Dale said. She couldn't stop. "Stop crying." "I'm sorry," she said. I'm sorry. Stop crying or I swear to." "I'm sorry, Dale, I'm sorry." He grabbed her by the back of her sweater. Her feet left the floor. She heard her mother's voice from the kitchen. "Dale, no." And then his voice, sharper now, cutting through. "Stay in there, Carol. I mean it." He was moving. She was moving with him, suspended from the back of her sweater like something he'd picked up and intended to put down somewhere else. She heard the back door. She heard the handle turn. She felt the cold before the door opened, felt it pressing through the cracks in the frame, announcing itself. Then the door opened. The cold came in like a living thing. "You want to cry?" Dale said. "Go cry out there. Come back when you can act right." He threw her. She flew off the back porch steps and hit the snow, and the cold hit her all at once. The impact in the freeze, in the complete, total shock of the outside in December in Montana. And she lay there for a second just trying to understand what her body was telling her. She was wearing thin cotton leggings, a sweater that had been washed so many times the fabric had gone nearly transparent. No coat, no boots. She was barefoot. She got up. She ran back to the porch. She pounded on the door with both fists. "Mom! Mom, please! It's cold! Mom, please open the door!" She heard the deadbolt slide home. She heard the click of it, small and definitive, the sound of a decision being made and locked in place. She stood at the door and kept knocking until her knuckles hurt, and then she stopped knocking because her knuckles had gone numb and she couldn't feel them anymore, which was the first sign, though she didn't know it, of what was beginning. She looked through the window. She could see Dale moving back to his recliner. She could see the television turn up louder. She could see her mother slide down the kitchen cabinets to the floor, her face in her hands, her shoulders moving with crying that made no sound. Nobody was coming. She waited 10 minutes. She counted by the seconds the way her teacher had shown her. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, until she reached 600, and the cold had stopped being a feeling and started being something else. Something that came from inside now, not outside. Something that was very slowly and very deliberately turning her into something quieter than herself. She had to move. She stepped off the porch into the snow. It came up past her knees. She walked toward the road, toward the orange smear of highway lights she could see through the trees, half a mile away at least, because moving was the only thing left to try. She walked for a long time. She couldn't have said how long. Time had started doing something strange, stretching and compressing, the way it does when your body is making decisions you're not fully part of. Her feet had stopped hurting. That was a fact she noted, somewhere in the back of her mind, with the last working part of her that understood what facts meant. Her feet had stopped hurting because they had stopped feeling anything. She fell at the edge of the drainage ditch off Route 11. She didn't fall forward, dramatically, the way people fall in movies. She just went down. Her legs simply stopped being legs, and she went down into the snow, and the snow was very soft and very cold, and not cold at the same time. And she curled onto her side the way she curled in bed when the trailer was cold in the night, and the snow began to settle around her like something kind. Her right hand was closed around something. She had picked it up off the linoleum floor when Dale grabbed her. She had not made a decision to take it. Her hand had simply closed around it on its way up from the floor, and she had held it through everything, the throw, the door, the pounding, the walking, without opening her fingers once. A shard of glass, the angel's wing. The edge of it had cut her palm. She could feel the sting of it even now, even through the numbness, a small, precise pain. She held on to it anyway, because it was the last piece of something her grandmother had touched. Because if she held on to it, it was like holding on to the hand that had held on to her. The snow kept falling. The world kept going dark. Lily Mae Pruitt closed her eyes. Ryan Cole had been driving for 40 minutes, and he still hadn't found anything that helped. That was the thing about this kind of grief, the kind that had a specific date attached to it, the kind that came around every year on the same calendar page, like an appointment you couldn't cancel. It didn't respond to motion the way ordinary grief did. Ordinary grief you could outrun, at least temporarily. You could get on the highway and go far enough and fast enough that the noise of the engine drowned out the noise in your head. The grief with a date on it waited for you at the end of every road. December 24th, 2003. Sarah Cole had died in a house fire while Ryan was 2 states away on a chapter run. He had gotten the call on a payphone outside a diner in Wyoming. He had ridden back to Billings in weather he shouldn't have been riding in. And when he got there had been nothing left of the house on Maple Street but a foundation and the smell of smoke that seemed to live in his clothes for months afterward. 6 years. He had been carrying it for 6 years. He had carried it on the road and in the bar and in the work of the club. And he had carried it in the specific silence of his house on Maple Street. A different house now, the one he'd bought after the fire, the one that had never quite become a home, and he had carried it here, tonight, in the cab of his truck on Route 11 west of Billings, in the 17 below dark of Christmas Eve. Merry Christmas, Sarah, he thought, and it came out bleak and private, the way you think things to people who are gone, in the place inside yourself where they still live. He was approaching mile marker 38, thinking about turning around, when his headlights swept the drainage ditch. He almost didn't stop. His brain cataloged the shape immediately and moved on. Debris, trash bag, blown tire, and he was already planning the U-turn at the abandoned gas station ahead. He was already thinking about going back to the clubhouse, finding a corner, nursing a beer until the date passed. And then something made him slow down. He couldn't name it. He would try later on multiple occasions, and he would never land on the right word. It wasn't a sound. It wasn't a vision. It was more like something in the machinery of him, the deep animal part that had kept him alive through 20 years of situations that should have been unsurvivable. Suddenly and without explanation said, "Stop." He stopped. He put the truck in park. He pulled the mag light from under the seat. He got out. The cold hit him, but he barely registered it. He was already moving toward the ditch. He shone the light on the shape. Ryan Cole had seen a lot of things in his life that had required him to be still and controlled and not let what he was feeling show in his face or his body. He had developed this skill over decades. He was very good at it. He was not good at it right now. She was a little girl, blonde hair frozen to her cheek, skin the color of old candle wax, blue at the lips, barefoot, no coat, a sweater you could almost see through. She was curled on her side with her knees drawn up and her right hand pressed against her chest, holding something. He pulled off his glove. He pressed 2 fingers to the side of her neck. Cold, marble cold, the cold of something that has been outside in 17 below for long enough to make you do the math and not like the answer. He counted. 1, 2, 3, 4. There, a pulse. Faint and irregular, like a candle flame in a draft. Like something that had decided to keep going without being entirely sure why. Ryan Cole did not think. He scooped her up and ran. She weighed nothing. She was 7 years old and she weighed nothing, and he was running for his truck, and he was aware of a sound in his own chest that he had not heard for 6 years. A sound like something that had been locked up for a long time breaking open. He laid her on the bench seat. He cranked the heat to maximum and then past maximum, the dial pressed hard against its limit. He stripped off his leather cut, his Hell's Angels cut, the thing that identified him, the thing that had cost him more to earn than most people spend their entire lives working toward, and wrapped it around her, tucking it close. He looked at her face in the dome light, the bruise on her jaw, purple-black, fresh, with older green-yellow beneath it where something earlier was fading. The cut on her hand, the small, precise slice still seeping from whatever she was holding. The hollows in her cheeks, the way her collarbone stood out too clearly under her skin. This was not a child who had gotten lost in a blizzard. This was a child who had been put here. Ryan grabbed his phone and called Marcus. Marcus Webb, Patch, had been the chapter's sergeant-at-arms for 11 years and a combat medic for 8 years before that. 2 tours in Iraq. A man who had performed triage under mortar fire and kept his hands steady doing it. He answered on the second ring. Patch, listen to me carefully. Clear the back room. Get the trauma kit, the warming blankets, the heating packs, everything you've got. What happened? I found a kid. Hypothermia, severe. She's been beaten. I'm 10 minutes out. A half-second pause. The party noise in the background disappeared. 10 minutes, Patch said. I'll be ready. If you aren't, she dies. 10 minutes, Patch said again. Ride or die, brother. Ryan threw the phone on the dashboard. He looked at the girl wrapped in his cut. He put the truck in gear. Hey, he said. The word came out low and rough. Hey, you stay with me. Don't you check out, not tonight. You hear me? Not on Christmas. Not on my watch. He pressed the accelerator and the truck roared out onto Route 11, and the chains tore through the packed snow, and he drove toward Billings like something that had found its purpose after a very long time of not having one. The clubhouse went quiet when he walked through the door. 23 men, full Patch members of the Hell's Angels Montana chapter. Men who had seen things, men who had done things, men whose files in the ATF database ran to multiple pages. They had been in the middle of a Christmas Eve party that had been running hot. Music, beer, the specific loud warmth of men who had chosen each other as family. Every one of them stopped and turned. Ryan crossed the floor without slowing. He crossed through the crowd and into the back room where Patch had the pool table cleared, and his kit open, and the warming blankets stacked, and his face arranged in the flat, focused expression that meant he had set aside everything that was not the next 10 minutes. Ryan laid her on the table. He pulled back his cut. The sound that went through the room was not a word. It was something below words. A low, collective intake of breath, involuntary, pulled out of 23 men simultaneously by the sight of what was on the table. She was so small. Patch was already moving. Get back, he said not loudly. All of you, get back and give me air. Cole, you stay. The men moved back. The ones near the door stepped out into the main room, but none of them went far. They stood in the doorway and along the wall, and they watched. "Temperature's critical," Patch said, his fingers at her neck. "Heart rate is there, but it's barely there. Cole, she's been out long enough for her core to drop. If we warm her too fast—" "Fix her," Ryan said. "I'm telling you what we're dealing with." "I know what we're dealing with." Ryan's voice was low and hard. "Fix her." Patch cut the sweater away with heavy shears. The fabric fell open. The room went still. Old bruises on her rib cage. Yellow-green, fading. New ones, deep purple, still swelling. Small, circular scars on her left shoulder. Patch's jaw tightened when he saw them, and he said nothing for a moment. And then he said quietly, "Those are cigarette burns." And the words landed in the room like stones dropped into still water. And the stillness that followed them was the particular stillness of men who have reached the end of what they are going to stand for. Darnell Washington, tiny, 310 pounds, tattoos to his jawline, turned away from the table and stood with his back to the room. His shoulders were shaking. Nobody said a word about it. Ryan sat in the folding chair next to the table. He reached out and took her hand. It was small and cold, and he held it the way you hold something you are afraid might dissolve if you grip too tight. He found her name an hour later, stitched in faded marker on the inside collar of the sweater Patch had cut away. Small, careful letters, written by someone who wanted to be sure she wasn't forgotten. Lily. He said it out loud, just once. "Hey, Lily," he said, under his breath, too quietly for anyone else to hear. "You're not alone anymore." And on the floor, where it had fallen from her hand when they lifted her, he found the shard of glass. He picked it up and held it to the light. Curved, delicate, part of a wing. The edge was sharp and stained with a thin, dark line of dried blood from the cut on her palm. She had been dying in a blizzard. She had been holding this so tightly it had cut her, rather than let it go. Ryan closed his fist around it. He looked up at the ceiling. He looked back at the girl. "Whoever broke this," he said very quietly, to no one and to everything, "is going to wish they had frozen to death instead." And then Lily convulsed. It happened without warning. A sudden, total seizure through her whole body. Violent, her back arching off the pool table, her arms rigid, and Ryan was up and his hands were on her shoulders before any other part of him had processed what was happening. "Warming response," Patch said immediately, his voice knife steady. "Her blood is returning to her core. Hold her. Talk to her." Ryan held her. He used his forearms to keep her from throwing herself off the table. He talked to her. He said, "I've got you, and you're okay, and stay with me, and don't you quit on me, Lily. Don't you dare." And the words came out of him in a low, continuous stream, and he had no idea afterward what most of them were. The seizure lasted 20 seconds. It felt like 20 years. Then she went still. Ryan said Patch's name. One word, containing everything else. Patch pressed 2 fingers to her neck. He waited. Then he let out a breath. "Stronger," he said. "The seizure was a good sign. She's warming. She's fighting." Ryan sat down. He ran both hands over his face. He looked at his hands. They were shaking. He looked around the room at the hardest men he had ever known, and he saw something in their faces that he had not seen in 20 years of riding with them. Something raw and unguarded and entirely without performance. Some of them had red eyes. "She stays here," Ryan said. His voice carried to every corner of the room without him raising it. "Nobody calls the police yet. The system failed her before she ever hit that snow. She stays here, under our protection, until she wakes up and tells us who did this." Frank Holloway, Bull, the chapter president, 61 years old and walking with a cane from a knee he'd never had properly looked at, pushed through to the front. He looked at the girl on the table. He looked at Ryan. He nodded. "Set a rotation," Bull said. "Nobody through that door without Cole's say-so. Patch, you stay the night." "I'm not going anywhere," Patch said. The men filed out. Ryan stayed. He was still sitting in the folding chair at 4 in the morning when Lily Mae Pruitt opened her eyes, looked at the room full of large men in leather, and screamed. No, no, please, I'm sorry, please don't. She was off the table before anyone moved, pressed into the back corner, arms over her head, shoulders curved, making herself a smaller target. Ryan was on one knee on the concrete floor before she stopped screaming. He kept his distance. He kept his hands where she could see them. He kept his voice low. Lily. She shook her head, face hidden in her knees. Lily, look at me. Look around. You're not in the snow. You're inside. You're warm. Nobody in this room is going to touch you. She didn't look up. My name is Ryan, he said. People call me Iron. I found you in the ditch off Route 11. I brought you in. The man next to me, his name is Marcus. He's a doctor. He fixed you up. Silence. Is Dale here? She whispered. The name moved through Ryan like something sharp. Who is Dale? My stepdad. Is he the one who put you outside, Lily? A pause, very small, very long. She nodded. Because I broke the ornament, she said. Her voice was barely a breath. It was my grandma's, and I broke it, and he got mad. He said, she stopped, swallowed. He said, don't come back until I can act right. Ryan reached into his pocket. He held the shard of glass out on his open palm, where she could see it. You held on to this the whole time, he said. She looked at it. She reached out slowly and took it. She pressed it against her chest with both hands. It was my grandma's, she said. She said it was magic. Ryan looked at her. He looked at the shard she was clutching to her chest. He looked at the cut on her palm. He stood up. He turned to Bull in the doorway, and the look that passed between them required no translation. Rest now, Ryan said to Lily. He pulled the blanket up to her chin with hands that he held very steady. Nobody comes through that door. Not Dale, not anybody. You have my word. She looked at him for a long moment. This terrifying man with the gray beard and the wet eyes and the winged skull on his chest. And she decided something. You promise? She whispered. I promise, he said. She was asleep in less than 5 minutes. Ryan stood over her for one more minute. Then he put on his coat. He slid the wrench into his belt. He checked the knife in his boot. He turned to Bull. Get the chapter ready, he said. I'm going to find the trailer. When I call, bring everything. Bull was already reaching for his phone. Ryan drove with both hands on the wheel and his jaw set like concrete. The chains bit through the packed snow on Route 11 with a rhythmic grinding that was the only sound in the cab. The heater was running full blast. The cigarette between his fingers had burned down to the filter without him taking a single drag. He hadn't noticed. He was thinking about the shard of glass in his coat pocket. He was thinking about the cut on Lily's palm. He was thinking about a 7-year-old girl who had held on to a piece of her dead grandmother's ornament so tightly it had sliced through her skin, and had kept holding on anyway, because some things you do not let go of, even when letting go, would hurt less. He was thinking about Dale. He reached mile marker 38 and pulled to the shoulder. He got out. He walked to the edge of the drainage ditch and looked down at the place where he had found her, already filling back in with fresh snow. And he stood there for 10 seconds exactly, and then he turned and followed her tracks back through the dark. She had walked 1.25 miles. He measured it in his own steps, following the shallow, uneven impressions she had left. Small, barefoot, stumbling, each one a little shallower than the last as her legs started failing her. He followed them through the stand of scrub pine and out along the gravel service road and down to the back edge of Blackfoot Creek Estates. And he felt with each step the full weight of what it had taken for a 7-year-old with no coat and no shoes, and hypothermia setting in to cover this ground in the dark. He had met brave men in his life. Hard men, tough men, men who had done things under pressure that most people couldn't have done. This child in her bare feet had outwalked every one of them. He moved along the tree line until he found what he was looking for. Third trailer on the left. Wooden back porch with a rotting railing. A hollow core back door. And on the snow-covered porch railing, catching the thin gray light of the Montana dawn, a glint of silver. He brushed it with his gloved finger. silver glitter, a chip of glass. He was in the right place. He moved to the side of the trailer and looked through the gap in the curtains. A man in a recliner. Enormous, easily 280, maybe more, soft in the way that men get when the only exercise they take is lifting something from a cooler. White t-shirt, mouth open, a beer can balanced on his chest, rising and falling with each snore, like it had found the most comfortable place in the world and had no intention of leaving. And in the kitchen, a woman, blonde hair, dull, unwashed, moving in small, jerky bursts, washing a dish, stopping, staring at the window, washing another dish. Her face was puffy, her eyes were red. She kept looking out at the backyard with the expression of a woman who was looking for something she already knew she wasn't going to find. Ryan watched them for a full minute without moving. The man was sleeping off Christmas Eve. The woman was washing dishes. The television was on. There was coffee on the counter. They were warm. They were comfortable. They were living their lives as if nothing had happened, as if a 7-year-old girl had not walked 1.25 miles barefoot through a Montana blizzard because this man had thrown her off the porch, and this woman had listened to the fists on the door and locked the deadbolt anyway. Ryan pulled out his phone. Bull. Go, Bull said. Background noise. Engines warming up. Blackfoot Creek Estates, Lot 7. White trailer, blue trim. 2 subjects. Male, heavy, asleep in a chair. Female in the kitchen. No one else visible. Copy. We're 10 minutes out. Roads are clear. Bring everything, Ryan said. And Bull, don't knock. He hung up. He leaned against the siding of the trailer and lit a cigarette and waited. He didn't hide. He didn't move back toward the tree line. He stood in the yard in plain sight, and if Carol Pruitt looked out her kitchen window, she would see him, and he did not care. Let the fear start now. Inside, Carol dried her hands on the dish towel for the 3rd time, though her hands weren't wet anymore. She had been drying them compulsively for 20 minutes, needing something to do with her hands, needing the motion of it. Behind her, Dale was still snoring. The television was doing its cheerful Christmas morning thing, colors bright, voices warm, a world that bore no relationship to the inside of this trailer. She looked out the window again. She stopped. There was a man in the yard. She couldn't see him clearly through the snow fog glass, but she could see enough. Large, very large, standing perfectly still, not moving, just standing there, looking at the trailer. Dale, she said. He grunted. Dale, wake up. Her voice came out higher than she wanted. There's someone in the yard. Go away, Carol. Dale, there is a man standing in our yard. Something in her voice reached him. He opened his eyes. He hauled himself upright, scratching, squinting, the beer can tumbling to the floor. What are you talking about? In the yard. Behind the trailer, there's a... And then the sound started. It began as a vibration, felt through the floor before it was heard. A low-frequency tremor that made the dishes in the cabinet rattle faintly, that made the coffee ripple in its mug. Dale heard it and went still. Carol heard it and her stomach dropped through the floor. It grew. It became a sound. It became many sounds layered on top of each other. The deep, synchronized thunder of engines, multiple engines, more than she could count, getting louder, getting closer. Dale was at the front window. He had the curtain back and his face was pressed to the glass, and the color of his face was the color of something that had been wrong for a long time and had just now been informed of it. What is it? Carol said. Dale, what? He didn't answer. He couldn't. She pushed past him and looked. Coming down the lane of Blackfoot Creek Estates was a convoy that had no business existing on a Christmas morning in rural Montana. A black GMC Yukon in the lead, brush guard forward, splitting the snow. Behind it, 4 pickup trucks running tight and deliberate. And behind the trucks, in weather that should have made it impossible, 6 motorcycles on heavy winter tires, moving in 2 precise lines. They drove onto the lawn. They formed a semicircle around the trailer. The engines cut. The silence that followed was the loudest thing Carol had ever heard. Doors opened. Men stepped out. 21 men in leather and denim and winter gear, each one wearing a patch that Carol recognized from news programs she had watched with a comfortable certainty that such things happen to other people. In other places, not here. "Hell's Angels," Dale whispered. His voice was a child's voice. Everything large and cruel about him had evaporated in approximately 30 seconds. "Why are the Hell's Angels in my yard? What did you do? Who did you call?" "I didn't call anyone," Carol said. "You had to have called someone." "I didn't call anyone, Dale." He was backing away from the window. "Lock the door, lock the back door, get the kitchen knife, Carol, go." He grabbed the phone off the wall. He pressed it to his ear. Nothing. No dial tone. Dead. Outside, Ryan stood next to the telephone junction box with a pair of wire cutters in his hand. He looked down at the severed line in the snow. He dropped the cutters into his pocket. He walked around to the front of the trailer. Bull was already there, leaning on his cane in the center of the semicircle of men. He nodded at Ryan. "You want the honors?" Ryan looked at the front door. He thought about the deadbolt. He thought about Lily's fists against that same door 8 hours ago, pounding until her knuckles went numb, until she understood that nobody was going to open it. He walked up the porch steps. The wood groaned. He raised his right boot, size 14, steel toe, and drove it into the lock mechanism. The frame exploded. The deadbolt tore through the rotted wood. The door flew inward and hit the interior wall so hard the whole trailer shook, and the cold came in behind Ryan in a wave, and he stepped through the doorway and ducked his head and straightened to his full height inside the living room. Dale was against the back wall with a kitchen knife in a hand that was shaking so badly the blade was making small circles in the air. His face was the color of old cement. His mouth was open. Whatever he had told himself about himself, whatever story he had constructed over years about what kind of man he was falling apart in real time. Carol was in the kitchen doorway, one hand on the frame, the other pressed against her mouth. Ryan looked at the knife. He looked at Dale. His expression did not change. "Put it down," he said. "Conversational. Quiet. The kind of quiet that is worse than shouting." "Take whatever you want," Dale said. The words came out in a rush. "TV, cash. There's cash in the jar on the counter. Just take what you want and go, man. I don't know you. I got nothing to do with whatever you think." "Put the knife down, Dale." The name stopped him. Dale's mouth closed. His eyes sharpened for 1 second with the specific fear of a man who has just realized that the person in front of him knows who he is. The knife hit the floor. Ryan took 1 step forward. "I don't know what she told you," Dale started, his voice pitching higher. "But whatever she said, she's a problem, kid. She's always been a problem. I was just trying to—" Ryan reached into his coat pocket and held up the shard of glass between his thumb and forefinger. He let it catch the light. Dale looked at it. He looked at Ryan. His face did the thing that Carol would remember for the rest of her life. The thing of a man who has done something in the dark and has just understood that the dark is over. The kid," Dale whispered. "That kid," Ryan said, "is 7 years old. She walked 1.25 miles barefoot in 17 below zero. You know how I found her? Curled up in a ditch, not moving, blue, barely a pulse." He paused. "She was holding this. She held onto it so tight it cut her hand open. She bled in the snow, Dale. She bled in the snow holding a piece of her grandmother's ornament because it was the only thing she had left after you broke it." Dale said nothing. "She's alive," Ryan said. "No credit to you." He grabbed Dale by the throat. He did it without violence. No wind-up, no announcement. Just reached out and closed his hand and lifted. And Dale Pruitt came up out of his boots and went back against the wood-paneled wall, and the pictures fell, and the shelf came off its bracket, and Dale's feet scrambled against the linoleum, finding nothing. "Is she alive?" Carol screamed from the doorway. She had both hands over her mouth, and tears were running down her face, and her voice was the voice of a woman who had been holding a question inside her all night and could no longer hold it. "Please, please tell me she's alive." Bull turned to Carol. His voice had the temperature of January concrete. "She's alive. No thanks to you. You heard her on that door. You heard her in the snow. You locked the deadbolt and washed your dishes." "I was afraid of him," Carol wept. "I was so afraid." "She was 7 years old, and she was more afraid than you," Bull said, "and she didn't have the option of going back inside." Carol slid down the doorframe to the floor. She didn't try to stop herself. Ryan still had Dale by the throat. He held him there and looked at him. Looked at the watering eyes, the working jaw, the hands gripping Ryan's wrist with the full strength of a big man and accomplishing nothing. And he felt the thing inside him that had been building since mile marker 38 reach its peak and then, deliberately, slowly, pull back. Killing was easy. Killing was over. He wanted Dale to go on living for a very specific amount of time in a very specific kind of way. He set him down. Dale hit the floor and stayed there, both hands at his throat, gasping. "Get him up," Ryan said. 2 men came through the door and grabbed Dale by the arms. Dale kicked. He yelled. He called them names that the wind took away and that nobody would remember. He was 280 pounds of a man who had spent years being the most dangerous thing in whatever room he occupied. And he was discovering, in the specific educational manner of a person being carried by 2 Hell's Angels patch holders toward an open door in December, that context matters enormously. "Where are you taking me? Where are you taking me? I'll call the police. I'll have you all arrested." "Your phone's not working," Ryan said. He followed them to the door and stood on the porch and watched. They put Dale in the snow in his undershirt and sweatpants. They took the sweatpants. They left him in his boxers and his undershirt, barefoot, in the same drift where Lily had landed 8 hours ago. Dale screamed. He screamed for help and for mercy and for Carol and for a blanket and for the police. He screamed in the particular, unguarded way that men scream when every pretense is gone and there is nothing left but the animal fact of the cold. "Start running," Bull said. He said it the way you'd say, "Good morning. Sheriff's deputies are 3 minutes out. You can run toward them and get a warm car, or you can run away from them and see how long you last. Either way, go." Dale ran. He slipped and caught himself and slipped again and ran for the highway in his underwear and his bare feet. And 2 of the chapter followed at a distance, not to harm him, just to make sure he kept moving, until he hit the shoulder of Route 11, where they stopped and turned back. Ryan watched him go without expression. Then he went back inside. Carol was still on the kitchen floor. She hadn't moved. She looked up at Ryan when he came back in, and what was in her face was not fear anymore, or not only fear. It was the face of a woman who has been waiting a long time for the moment when the thing she has been lying to herself about finally becomes impossible to lie about. "Is she really alive?" Carol whispered. "Yes." "Where is she?" "Safe. That's all you need to know right now." "I want to." "No," Ryan said. "Not cruelly, just finally. You don't get to want anything right now. What you get to do is talk to the police when they get here, and you get to tell them everything. Every time, every mark, every night, all of it." He looked at her. "If you do that, if you tell the whole truth, all of it, nothing left out, there might be something for you on the other side of this. That's not a promise, that's a possibility. You understand what I'm saying?" Carol nodded. She was crying, but her hands had gone still in her lap. Something in her posture had changed. Some held thing had finally been set down. "She asked for me," Carol said. "When she woke up?" Ryan was quiet for a moment. "She asked if Dale was there," he said. Carol closed her eyes. Outside, the first set of red and blue lights appeared at the end of the trailer park lane. A Blackfoot County Sheriff's cruiser moving slow through the snow, followed by a second one. Bull had called them anonymously 20 minutes ago, given the address, given Dale's name, given enough to bring them out. Ryan walked back out to the porch. He stood there and watched the cruisers pull up, and he watched 2 deputies get out and look at the convoy of Hell's Angels gathered in the yard of this trailer and recalibrate their morning considerably. He watched them radio something back to dispatch. He watched them find Dale on the shoulder of Route 11, frost white and barely coherent, and put a blanket around his shoulders and put him in the back of the cruiser. He watched and felt nothing in particular about it. Satisfaction was too warm a word. It was more like completion, like something that had been left unfinished had been finished. He reached into his pocket and took out the shard of glass. He held it on his palm in the cold morning air and looked at it. The angel's wing, curved and delicate, with the tiny dried smear of Lily's blood on the sharp edge. She had held on to this in a blizzard. She had held on because some things you keep, even when keeping them, costs you. He folded his fingers around it. He turned back to Bull, who was standing at the bottom of the porch steps, watching him. "The hospital," Ryan said. Bull nodded. "I already called Patch. They're ready to transport when you say go." "Tell him to go," Ryan said. "Tell him I'll meet them there." He looked out at the deputies processing the scene, at the cruiser where Dale Pruitt sat wrapped in a blanket in the back seat, at the white expanse of Blackfoot Creek Estates coming to life around them as doors opened and neighbors looked out, and Christmas morning in rural Montana turned into something nobody on this street had expected to wake up to. He looked at all of it for one more second. Then he walked to his truck, got in, and drove toward Billings. Lily was waiting. Patch rode in the back of Bull's Yukon, with Lily on the bench seat, her head in his lap, wrapped in 2 wool blankets and Ryan's leather cut that she had refused to let anyone take off her since she'd woken up. She was conscious. That was the word Patch kept using when the other men asked. Conscious, stable, responding. And each time he said it, the tension in the vehicle dropped by a fraction and then rebuilt itself because conscious and stable and responding still meant a 7-year-old girl who had nearly died in a ditch 12 hours ago and whose body was still doing the slow, expensive work of coming back from that. She hadn't let go of the angel shard. Patch had tried, gently, twice, to take it for the bandaging. She had closed her fist around it both times without waking up. He had bandaged around her fist and left it. Ryan was already at St. Vincent's when they pulled up. He had driven straight from the trailer park without stopping, parked in the ambulance bay because he had no patience for parking structures on this particular morning, and was standing at the entrance with his arms crossed and his jaw set when the Yukon came through the lot. He opened the rear door before Bull had fully stopped. Lily opened her eyes when the cold air hit her face. "Hey," Ryan said. She looked at him. She blinked, slow, the way people blink when they are very tired and very young, and the world keeps being more than they have energy for. "Hey," she said back. He rode up in the elevator with her on the gurney. The ER team had come out to meet them. A doctor and 2 nurses moving with the specific efficiency of people who had been briefed in advance and had questions they were professionally obligated to ask, but were reading the room carefully before asking them. Ryan stood at the foot of the gurney with his hands in his coat pockets and answered what he answered and declined to answer what he declined to answer. And the doctor, a woman named Dr. Reyes, compact and direct, with the kind of eyes that had seen too much to be easily surprised, looked at him for one long second and then looked at Lily and made a decision. "You can stay," Dr. Reyes said, "as long as she wants you here." Ryan looked at Lily. "You want me here?" Lily nodded, one firm nod, no hesitation. "Then I'm here," he said. The next 6 hours were the kind of hours that redefine a person's understanding of the word waiting. Ryan sat in the chair next to the bed while the medical team did what the medical team did. And he watched Lily's face, and every time she looked toward him, he was already looking at her. And after the 3rd or 4th time, she seemed to accept this as a fact of her new reality and stopped looking surprised by it. They warmed her core temperature by degrees, slow and careful, the way you bring something fragile back from the edge. They put an IV in her left arm, which she watched with an expression of focused scientific interest rather than fear, which told Ryan something about the specific quality of her courage. They treated the cut on her palm, and this time she let them take the shard while they worked, though she watched where they put it and held her hand out for it the moment the bandaging was done. Dr. Reyes came in at noon and sat down across from Ryan with a chart in her hands and a look on her face that was measuring him. "She's going to be okay," Dr. Reyes said. Core temp is back in normal range. No frostbite, which is, frankly, it's remarkable. The malnourishment is going to take time. The bruising is consistent with repeated physical abuse over an extended period. She paused. The cigarette burns on her shoulder are at various stages of healing. The oldest ones are at least a year old. Ryan said nothing. He was looking at the floor. Mr. Cole, he looked up. Who did this to her? Her stepfather. Name is Dale Pruitt. He's currently in the back of a Blackfoot County Sheriff's cruiser. Ryan's voice was flat and even. He threw her off the back porch last night in what she was wearing. She walked 1.25 miles barefoot before she went down. Dr. Reyes was quiet for a moment. The detectives are going to need to speak with her, she said, when she's ready. She'll talk to them when she's ready, Ryan said. Not before. That's not really. She will talk to them when she is ready, Ryan said again. Still flat, still even, still entirely without room for negotiation. She has been through enough for one Christmas. They can wait. Dr. Reyes looked at him for a long moment. Then she wrote something in the chart and stood up. I'll tell them she's not stable enough for questioning yet, she said. She will be tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning, Ryan agreed. After the doctor left, Lily was quiet for a while. She was lying on her back, looking at the ceiling with the angel shard resting on her bandaged palm. Just resting there, not clutched, like she had finally relaxed her grip by a degree. Is my mom in trouble? She said. Ryan had been waiting for this question. He had been turning over various versions of an answer since the trailer park, and he had not arrived at one that was both true and kind, so he had decided to be true. Yes, he said. Lily absorbed this, because she didn't open the door. Yes. She was scared of Dale, Lily said. Her voice was not defending Carol exactly. It was more like she was laying out the facts of a case she had been studying for a long time. He hit her too. Not as much as me, but he hit her. I know, Ryan said. Does that matter? To the police? It matters, Ryan said. It doesn't fix everything, but it matters. Lily looked at the ceiling for another minute. Is she going to jail? I don't know yet. Okay, Lily said. And she said it in the specific way of a child who has made a private peace with uncertainty, because uncertainty has been the primary condition of her life for as long as she can remember. Ryan looked at her. He looked at this 8-year-old. She had told him her birthday was in November. She had turned 8 6 weeks ago, lying in a hospital bed on Christmas morning with an IV in her arm and a piece of her dead grandmother's ornament on her palm, discussing her mother's potential incarceration with the measured calm of a person twice her age. He felt something move in his chest. Not grief this time, something more like awe. Are you hungry? He said. She looked at him. For 1 second, her face did something unguarded, something that was just a kid being asked a simple question. Yeah, she said, kind of really hungry. He went and got her a grilled cheese sandwich from the hospital cafeteria and a cup of chicken soup and a chocolate milk. And when he came back, she ate all of it, methodically and without conversation. And he sat in the chair and drank terrible cafeteria coffee and watched her eat and felt, for the first time in 6 years, like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. Then the caseworker arrived, and everything got harder. Her name was Linda Garrett. She was from the Montana Department of Family Services, and she arrived at 2 in the afternoon on Christmas Day with a clipboard and a lanyard, and the practiced expression of a woman who had delivered difficult news enough times to have developed a system for it. She knocked on the door of Lily's room, looked at Ryan in the chair, looked at Lily in the bed, and said she needed to speak with Mr. Cole privately. Ryan looked at Lily. I'll be right outside the door, he said. Okay, Lily said. She was watching Linda Garrett with her scientist eyes, cataloging. Ryan stepped into the hallway and pulled the door mostly closed and turned to face Linda Garrett. And Linda Garrett looked up at him. He had a full foot on her and did not flinch, which he noted and respected. Mr. Cole, I understand you're the individual who found Lily and transported her to safety. Yes. That was a heroic act, she said, And I want you to know that the department appreciates. What do you need? Ryan said. She paused, recalibrated. Lily is going to need a placement. Given her mother's situation, Carol Pruitt is being held pending charges, and the absence of any other immediate family. She's not going into foster care, Ryan said. Linda Garrett's expression did the thing of a person encountering an unexpected obstacle and needing a moment to assess it. Mr. Cole, I understand your concern, but the legal process, she's not going into foster care, Ryan said again. She doesn't know anyone in the system. She's been through enough. She stays somewhere she feels safe. And where would that be? With me. The silence that followed was the kind that has a shape to it. Linda Garrett looked at him. She looked at the Hell's Angels cut visible under his open coat. She looked at the patches. She looked at his hands. She looked at his face. Mr. Cole, she said carefully, I appreciate what you did for this child, but temporary guardianship requires a home assessment, a background check, Then do the assessment, Ryan said. Check the background. Do everything you need to do. But until it's done, she stays in this hospital and I stay in that chair. And you are not putting her in a van with a stranger. I'm not a stranger, Linda Garrett said. And there was something honest in her voice when she said it. Something that wasn't bureaucracy. You are to her, Ryan said. I'm not. Linda Garrett looked at the door. She looked at Ryan. She pulled a form from her clipboard. I'm going to need your full legal name, address, and employment information, she said. And I want to be clear, this is not an approval. This is a hold while we process. Fine, Ryan said. His name is Ryan James Cole, 412 Maple Street, Billings. I own Cole Automotive on 3rd. I've been there 15 years. She was writing. She stopped. She looked up. Cole Automotive, she said. On 3rd. Yes. I've taken my car there, she said. Twice. Ryan looked at her. You do good work, she said, and clicked her pen and walked back down the hallway. Ryan stood in the corridor for a moment. Then he pushed the door open and went back to the chair. Lily was watching him. Are they going to make me go? She said. No, Ryan said. How do you know? Because I said no. He sat down. And I said it in a way that was hard to argue with. Lily considered this. Are you allowed to do that? I'm working on it. She looked at him for a long moment with those blue eyes that saw more than they should. Why? She said. He looked back at her. Why what? Why are you doing all this? You don't know me. You just... She paused, and the pause was full of something complicated. You just found me in a ditch. Ryan turned the coffee cup in his hands. He looked at the window. He looked at the floor. He looked at the shard of glass on her palm. I had a wife, he said. Her name was Sarah. She died 6 years ago. He stopped, started again. We used to talk about having kids. It never happened. He stopped again. I've been driving around on Christmas Eve for 6 years because I didn't know what else to do with the date. He looked at her. And then I drove down Route 11. Lily was very still. Do you think she sent you? She said. Sarah? Ryan was quiet for a long time. I think, he said finally, that some things don't have explanations that fit in regular sentences. Lily looked at the angel shard in her palm. My grandma used to say that angels don't look like what you expect, she said. She said they look like whatever you need them to look like. Ryan said nothing. Something in his throat had closed up. You look like a biker, Lily said, but you came. The 2 detectives arrived the next morning. Ryan was there. Lily had asked him to stay in the room, and Dr. Reyes had relayed this request, and the detectives, a man named Briggs and a woman named Castillo, both of them professional and careful in the way of people who do hard interviews regularly and have learned to do them without flinching, had agreed. Lily told them everything. She told it without stopping, without breaking down, without looking at the floor. She looked at Detective Castillo, and she talked. She talked about 3 years. She talked about the specific language of fear she had learned to speak in that trailer, the way Dale's voice changed, the things that set him off. The nights Carol couldn't help her, and the nights Carol tried, and the nights Carol was too far gone in her own fear to do anything at all. She talked about the angel. She talked about the porch. She talked about the 1.25 miles in the snow. Ryan sat in the chair and held her hand and felt the bones of her fingers pressing against his knuckles. And he did not look away from her face once. When she was done, Detective Castillo closed her notebook and looked at Lily for a moment. "You are," Castillo said, "one of the bravest people I have ever spoken to." Lily didn't seem to know what to do with this. She looked at Ryan. "She means it," Ryan said. Lily looked back at Castillo. "Is it enough? What I said? Is it enough for Dale to go to prison?" Castillo and Briggs exchanged a look. "Combined with the medical documentation," Briggs said, "and the physical evidence, and your mother's statement," he paused. "Carol Pruitt gave a full statement this morning. She told us everything." Something moved across Lily's face. Something complicated and unresolved and real. "She told the truth?" Lily said. "All of it," Castillo said. Lily was quiet for a moment. She looked at the window. She looked at the angel shard. "Good," she said, and then, quieter, "Good." After the detectives left, the room was very still. The monitors beeped softly. Somewhere down the corridor, a television was playing something with a laugh track, incongruous and distant. Ryan leaned back in the chair and looked at the ceiling. "Ryan," Lily said. It was the first time she had called him by his name instead of Iron. He registered this, carefully, without making anything of it out loud. "Yeah, if they make me go somewhere else," she started. "They won't." "But if they do, Lily," she stopped. "They won't," he said. "I told you. I don't say things I don't mean." She was quiet. Then, "How do you know?" The lady with the clipboard seemed pretty. "Because," Ryan said, "I have a very good lawyer, and a house with a spare bedroom, and 15 years of clean business records, and I am prepared to spend whatever it takes for however long it takes." He looked at her. "And because when you told that judge you wanted to stay with me, I don't think there's a judge alive who's going to tell you no." Lily blinked. "I haven't talked to any judge." "Not yet," Ryan said. She absorbed this. "You already have a plan," she said. "I have the beginning of a plan. That's different from a plan." "It's the part that matters most," he said. "The beginning is the part where you decide." Lily looked at him for a long time. Outside the window, Billings was doing its winter thing, gray and cold and going about its business, as if nothing extraordinary had happened in it in the last 36 hours. "Okay," she said. "Okay," it was a small word, 2 letters, but the way she said it, with the specific weight of a child who has been deciding everything alone for too long and has just, for the first time, decided to let someone else carry part of it, made it the most important word Ryan Cole had heard in 6 years. He looked at the window. He exhaled. Outside, somewhere below, a car alarm was going off, and someone was honking, and the ordinary noise of the city was doing its ordinary thing. He had made a promise to a 7-year-old in the dark. Now the real work was starting. The beginning of a plan, Ryan had said. What he had not told Lily was that the beginning of a plan, when you were a Hell's Angels patch holder with an ATF file and a history that stretched back 2 decades, looked considerably more complicated from the outside than it felt from the inside. Linda Garrett came back on December 27th. She came with a second caseworker named Philip, who was younger and quieter and carried a different kind of clipboard, and she sat down across from Ryan in the hospital family consultation room and laid out the situation with the brisk efficiency of a woman who had learned that false gentleness helped nobody. The state of Montana, she explained, had specific requirements for emergency foster placement: background check, home assessment, financial verification, references, a court hearing before a family court judge to establish temporary guardianship. The process, she said, typically took 4 to 6 weeks. Ryan looked at her. He looked at Philip. He looked at the table between them. "Lily has been in that hospital bed for 3 days," he said. "She wakes up twice a night. Every time she wakes up, she checks that I'm in the chair. When I'm not in the chair, she calls my name. You're telling me she needs to wait 4 to 6 weeks in a facility while the state of Montana processes paperwork. Mr. Cole, I understand. No, Ryan said, not loudly, not rudely, just with the absolute finality of a man who has drawn a line. I need you to understand something. I am not a flight risk. I am not moving. I am not going anywhere. My address has been 412 Maple Street for 11 years. My business has been on 3rd Avenue for 15 years. I have never been convicted of a single crime in the state of Montana or any other state. You run my background, you will find arrests. You will not find convictions. There is a difference. Linda Garrett looked at her clipboard. The club affiliation is not a crime, Ryan said. Being a member of a motorcycle club is not a crime. If it were, there would be a different law in the books, and you would have cited it by now. Philip made a small sound that might have been a suppressed laugh, and then immediately became very interested in something on his own clipboard. Linda Garrett looked at Ryan for a long moment. I'm going to need 3 character references, she said, people outside the club. Catherine Morse, Ryan said immediately, family law attorney, 15 years in Billings. Dr. Elena Reyes, St. Vincent's Hospital. And Tom Hadley, he's the principal at Jefferson Elementary. I fixed his transmission last year. He talked to me for 45 minutes about at-risk kids in his district while I was under the car. Ryan paused. I remember most of it. Linda Garrett wrote the names down. She looked at him again with that measuring look, the one he was starting to recognize as her version of honesty. Mr. Cole, she said, I want to be clear about something. My job is to find the best placement for this child, not the most conventional one, the best one. She tapped her pen against the clipboard. The best one, in this case, may not look like what the form was designed for. That's not my problem. My problem is what's best for Lily. We agree on that, Ryan said. Then let me do my job, she said. Don't obstruct the process. Let me do the home visit. Let me run the check. Let me talk to your references. She stood up. And Mr. Cole, clean the house. It's clean, Ryan said. Cleaner, she said, and walked out. Ryan sat in the consultation room alone for a minute. Then he pulled out his phone and called Catherine Morse. Catherine Morse was the kind of lawyer who answered her phone on the second ring on December 27th because she had learned 30 years ago that the cases worth taking never arrived at convenient times. She listened to Ryan without interrupting, which was one of the things he had always respected about her. She asked 4 questions, each one precise. She said she could be in Billings by noon the next day. One thing, Ryan said. Tell me, when this goes to a judge, and it's going to go to a judge, they're going to ask Lily what she wants. I need you to make sure she has a real chance to answer that question. Not coached, not pressured, just she gets to answer. Catherine was quiet for a moment. You know what you're asking. You're asking me to let an 8-year-old child determine the outcome of a custody hearing. I'm asking you to let her be heard, Ryan said. There's a difference. There is, Catherine agreed. And Ryan, you know that if she says she wants to go somewhere else, we honor that. I know, Ryan said. You're okay with that? He looked at the wall. He thought about Lily's face in the dome light of his truck. He thought about the sound she made when she woke up in the dark and checked that the chair was occupied. If she wanted to go somewhere else, Ryan said, it would mean she felt safe enough to want things. So yeah, I'd be okay with that. Catherine said she'd see him at noon. Ryan went back to the room. Lily was awake, sitting up, working on a drawing with the colored pencils Patch's wife had brought. She was drawing what appeared to be a motorcycle, with considerable technical detail for an 8-year-old who had been introduced to motorcycles 3 days ago through the medium of Ryan's magazine collection. That's not bad, Ryan said, sitting down. The front fork is wrong, she said without looking up. I looked at the picture 3 times and I still can't get it. The angle changes depending on the model, Ryan said. Chopper forks rake way out. Stock forks are almost vertical. She looked at him. She looked at the drawing. She added a line. Better, Ryan said. She looked at him again, calculating. Are you a good artist? No, he said. I can draw engines. Everything else looks like a crime scene. Lily laughed. It came out quickly, before she could stop it, real and unguarded. And then she looked slightly surprised at herself, and Ryan looked slightly surprised too, and neither of them said anything about it. The lady with the clipboard is coming back, Ryan said, and a lawyer named Catherine is coming to help us. There's going to be a process. It's going to take some time, and there are going to be some meetings where people ask you questions. Lily set the pencil down. She looked at him with her full attention, which was the kind of full attention that made you feel like you were being read. Are they going to try to take me away? She said. They're going to try to figure out what's best for you, Ryan said. Some of them think best means something specific that looks a certain way. Catherine and I think best means what you actually need. We're going to make that case. What if the judge disagrees? Judges are people, Ryan said. People can be persuaded by evidence. We're going to have a lot of evidence. She picked the pencil back up. She worked on the fork for a moment. What kind of evidence? The kind that's hard to argue with, he said. A clean house. A real job. People who know me and will say what they know. And you, if you want to talk. She looked up. I can talk to the judge? If you want to. What would I say? Ryan leaned forward, elbows on his knees. You'd say what's true. That's all. Just what's true. She thought about this for a long time. Long enough that he didn't try to fill the silence. Just let her think. Okay, she said finally. And then, Ryan, what's your house like? He paused. What do you mean? I mean, what's it like? Is it small? Is it loud? Does it smell like cigarettes? She said this last one carefully, like she was asking about something that had weight attached to it. He had not thought about this from her angle. He thought about it now. It's a 3-bedroom on Maple Street. It's quiet. I smoke outside, always outside. He looked at her. It has a yard. And a dog, technically. His name is Rivet. He's old. He mostly sleeps. He won't bother you. I like dogs, Lily said. He'll like you, Ryan said. He likes everybody. He's not a good guard dog. He's a good company dog. She almost smiled. Does he sleep on the bed? His own bed. I made him a bed out of an old jacket. He thinks it's the greatest thing that ever happened to him. This time she did smile. It was small and careful, like a window opened just a crack, but it was real. Then Dr. Reyes knocked on the door and came in with the expression of a woman who has news and is deciding how to package it. And Ryan felt the lightness in the room shift. Lily, Dr. Reyes said, I need to talk to you about something, and I want to ask first, do you want Ryan to stay in the room? Yes, Lily said immediately. Dr. Reyes sat down. She looked at Lily with the direct, respectful attention of a doctor who had decided years ago to treat her small patients like the people they were. You're doing really well, she said. Your numbers are good. Your temperature has been normal for 48 hours, and you're eating. She paused. I want to talk to you about your shoulder, the burns. Lily's jaw tightened, barely perceptibly. She nodded. Can you tell me about them? When they happened? Lily looked at the window. She looked at her drawing. She looked at Ryan, who was sitting very still, watching her with the steady, anchoring attention she had come to rely on in a way that still surprised her, because she had not known before this week that attention could feel like that, like something solid, like something you could lean your weight against. The first one was about a year ago, she said. Her voice was even. Dale was upset about something. I don't remember what. He said I was in the way. She stopped. There were 3 more after that, different nights. Dr. Reyes wrote something. She looked up. Did anyone see? A teacher? A neighbor? I wore long sleeves, Lily said. At school? Always. Lily said it the way you state a rule you followed for so long it no longer requires thought. I knew if anyone saw, Dale would find out. He always found out. Dr. Reyes looked at Ryan. Ryan looked at the floor. His hands were on his knees and his knuckles had gone white. We're going to document everything, Dr. Reyes said to Lily. With your permission. It's going to be part of the case against Dale. It matters. Document it, Lily said. Use all of it. She said it with a firmness that was startling, the firmness of someone who has decided that the things that were done to her in the dark are going to be brought into the light and used for something, are going to mean something, are not going to have happened for nothing. Dr. Reyes looked at her for a moment. She said, "Lily, you are something else." Lily looked faintly puzzled. "Is that good?" "That is very good," Dr. Reyes said. After the doctor left, Ryan stayed in the chair and looked at the window and did not say anything for a while. Lily let him not say anything. She went back to her drawing. After about 5 minutes, she said, without looking up, "You're doing the thing where you're angry, but you're not going to say so." Ryan looked at her. "Yeah, it's okay," she said. "I'm kind of angry too. I've been angry for a long time. It doesn't have anywhere to go anymore." "It'll have somewhere to go," Ryan said, "when the trial happens. When Dale sits in that courtroom and you've already told the truth and there's nothing he can do about it." He paused. "That's where it goes." She thought about this. "Have you ever been in a courtroom?" "A few times." "Which side were you on?" He looked at her. "The wrong side, earlier in my life." She didn't look shocked. She looked, if anything, more interested. "What did you do?" "Things I'm not going to tell an 8-year-old, he said. "Things I'm not proud of. Things I can't undo." He held her gaze. "But I can tell you that I've had a long time to think about the difference between what I did then and what's right. And I know the difference now. That matters. It doesn't erase the other, but it matters." Lily was quiet for a moment. Then, "My teacher says everybody gets to be more than the worst thing they did." "Your teacher's right," Ryan said. "She also says everybody gets to be more than the worst thing that was done to them." Lily looked at her drawing. "I think about that one more." Ryan had nothing to say to that. He sat with it, the way you sit with something true. Catherine Morse arrived the next morning at 5 past noon, sharp-eyed and carrying a leather briefcase that had seen 30 years of Montana courtrooms. She shook Ryan's hand in the hallway, looked at him with the eyes of a woman who had heard his voice on the phone and was now calibrating the whole person, and said, "You look better than I expected." "What were you expecting?" "Your voice on the phone sounded like a man who hadn't slept in 4 days. 3, he said, and a half. "Sleep tonight," she said. "I mean it. You cannot do this on empty." She looked at the door to Lily's room. "Can I meet her?" "She's been told you're coming," Ryan said. "She's been asking what kind of lawyer you are." "What did you tell her?" "The kind who wins." Catherine almost smiled. "Let's go in." Lily watched Catherine Morse cross the room with the specific, watchful attention she applied to new people. Measuring, reserving judgment, ready to revise. Catherine sat down, set her briefcase on the floor, and looked at Lily with the direct, unpatronizing attention of a woman who had spent 30 years taking people seriously when other people didn't bother. "I'm Catherine," she said. "I'm going to help Ryan make sure you end up somewhere good. I need to ask you some questions, and I need you to answer them the way you'd answer anybody, just truthfully, just what you actually think, not what you think I want to hear. Can you do that?" "Yes," Lily said. "Good. What do you want?" Lily blinked. "What? What do you want? Not what you think you're allowed to want, not what seems realistic. What do you actually want?" Lily looked at Ryan. She looked back at Catherine. "I want to stay with Ryan," she said. "I want to go to the same school. I want to not be afraid when I hear a truck in the driveway." She paused. "I want a room that's mine. I've never had a room that was just mine." Catherine wrote something. She looked up. "That's everything I needed." She stood, picked up her briefcase, looked at Ryan. "The hearing is in 6 days. Judge Patricia Howard, Family Court. I've appeared before her 11 times. She is tough, and she is fair, and she has zero tolerance for wasted time." She looked back at Lily. "She is going to ask you what you told me. You answer exactly the way you answered me." "Okay," Lily said. "Lily," Catherine said, "at the door for what it's worth. I've been doing this for 30 years. I've sat in a lot of rooms with a lot of kids who had been through a lot of hard things. You are the clearest person I have met in a long time." Lily looked at her. "What does clear mean?" "It means you know who you are," Catherine said. Even after everything. That's rare. Don't let anybody take it from you. She left. Lily sat with this for a moment, then she looked at Ryan. 6 days, she said. 6 days, he confirmed. Are you scared? She said. He thought about lying. He decided against it. Yeah, he said. A little. Me too, she said. And then with a specific pragmatism that he had come to recognize as one of her defining qualities. But we have a good lawyer. We have the best lawyer, Ryan said. She picked up the pencil. She looked at her drawing. She picked up the blue one and added a detail to the motorcycle's tank. A small, careful line, precise and deliberate. Ryan, she said, not looking up. Yeah. What color is Rivet? He looked at her. He felt something in his chest do the thing it had been doing with increasing frequency since Christmas Eve. The thing where it opened up instead of closing down. Brown, he said, mostly, with one white ear. Does he like kids? He's never been around kids, Ryan said, but I think he'll figure it out fast. She nodded, like this settled something. Outside the window, Billings moved through its last days of the year in the cold and gray, unaware of what was happening in Room 4 North at St. Vincent's. Unaware that a 6-day countdown had started. Unaware that in 6 days, in a family courtroom on the 4th floor of the Yellowstone County Courthouse, an 8-year-old girl was going to look a judge in the eye and say what she wanted, and that what she wanted was going to be the clearest thing anyone in that courtroom had heard in a long time. Ryan sat in his chair. Lily drew her motorcycle. 6 days. The 6 days passed the way days pass when something important is at the end of them. Too slowly and too fast at the same time, each one full of small moments that felt significant because everything felt significant now. Ryan went home on day 4, not because he wanted to, but because Catherine had called him at 7 in the morning and said, "Go home, sleep in your own bed. Let Linda Garrett do her home visit tomorrow morning and let the house speak for itself. Lily is stable. Dr. Reyes is there. She is okay for one night." He drove home to Maple Street and walked through the front door and stood in the hallway for a moment, looking at the house the way a stranger might look at it, trying to see it through Linda Garrett's eyes, through the eyes of a family court judge, through the eyes of an 8-year-old girl who had said she'd never had a room that was just hers. The house was clean. It had always been clean. Ryan Cole was, contrary to what his exterior suggested, a man of considerable order, a trait born from years of working on engines where a misplaced tool could cost you everything. But clean and ready were different things. He stood in the doorway of the 3rd bedroom. It had been a storage room for years. Boxes, old gear, a shelf of engine manuals he hadn't touched in a decade. He looked at it for about 30 seconds. Then he called Patch. "I need help," he said. "Tonight." "What kind of help?" "The kind where you come over and help me move boxes and don't ask a lot of questions." "On my way," Patch said. Patch arrived 20 minutes later with his wife Dana, who had not been asked but who walked in, looked at the room, looked at Ryan and said, "I'm painting it, don't argue." She had brought paint. She had brought a roller and a tray and drop cloths, which told Ryan she had been planning this since approximately Christmas Day and had simply been waiting for him to catch up. "What color?" Ryan said. Dana looked at him. "What's her favorite color?" "I don't know," Ryan said, and then stopped, and then said, "Blue. Her eyes go to blue things. The blue pencil in the hospital. She always picks the blue cup." Dana held up a paint sample card. A clear, soft blue, the color of sky in early morning before it fully commits to the day. "That one," Ryan said. They worked until 2 in the morning. Patch moved the boxes to the garage. Ryan assembled a bed frame he had bought at 8:30 when the hardware store was about to close. The teenager at the counter looking at this large, tattooed man buying a twin bed frame with the puzzled expression of someone filing the image away as a story to tell later. Dana painted, precise and fast, cutting the edges without tape because she had been painting rooms for 20 years and didn't need tape. Ryan put the frame together and sat on the floor reading the instructions, which were in 4 languages and helpful in none of them. And Rivet lay against his leg the entire time, with the devoted uselessness of a very old dog who cannot help but wishes you to know he is present. At 2:15, Ryan sat on the bare mattress in the blue room and looked at the walls and felt something settle in him that had been unsettled for a very long time. "It needs a shelf," Dana said from the doorway. "Tomorrow," Ryan said. "And a lamp, something warm, not overhead. Kids don't like overhead light when they're sleeping. It's too exposed." "Dana," Patch said from behind her. "I'm just saying." "It's good," Ryan said. "It's really good. Thank you." Dana looked at the room. She looked at Ryan. Her eyes were bright and she pressed her lips together in the specific way of a woman who has feelings she has decided not to make into a speech. "She's going to love it," Dana said, and left it at that. Linda Garrett arrived the next morning at 9 sharp. She walked through the house with her clipboard and her careful eyes, and Ryan walked 2 steps behind her and said nothing unless she asked something. She looked at the kitchen, clean, stocked, functional. She looked at the living room, orderly, real, lived in without being chaotic. She opened the back door and looked at the yard, which was snow-covered and quiet, and Rivet pushed past her legs to go outside, and she looked down at him, and something in her expression softened by a fraction. Then she went to the blue room. She stood in the doorway. She looked at the walls, still faintly smelling of paint. The bed with its new frame and the quilt Dana had brought over at 7 this morning, blue and white, retrieved from a chest in her own house. The small shelf Ryan had mounted at 6 a.m., leveled 3 times until he was certain. The warm lamp on the nightstand, bought the night before. She was quiet for a moment. "You did this in one night," she said. "I had help," Ryan said. She wrote something on her clipboard. She clicked her pen. "Mr. Cole," she said, still looking at the room, "I've done approximately 400 home assessments in 14 years. I want you to know something." She turned and looked at him. "I've seen people with perfect houses who had no business raising a child. And I've seen people with imperfect houses who were exactly what a child needed." She looked at the room one more time. "This passes. That's the official word. This passes." Ryan exhaled. He hadn't realized he was holding his breath. "She's going to need time," Linda said, walking back down the hallway. "She's going to have hard nights. She's going to flinch at sounds for longer than you expect. She's going to test you, not on purpose, but she will. She's going to need to find out what happens when she does something wrong, whether what happens is what it always was, or whether it's something different." "It'll be different," Ryan said. "I know," Linda said. She paused at the front door. "That's why I'm recommending approval." The hearing was on January 2nd, 2010, at 10 in the morning, courtroom 4B of the Yellowstone County Courthouse. Ryan wore a collared shirt and his good jeans and his cleanest boots. Catherine Morse wore a charcoal suit in the expression of a woman who had won 11 of 11 hearings before this particular judge and saw no reason today would be different. Bull drove them. He wore a button-down shirt, which was, Ryan understood, a gesture of respect so significant it required no comment. Lily wore a yellow dress that Dana had bought her, and her hair braided by a nurse on the ward who had taken a personal interest in the outcome of this hearing. She sat next to Ryan at the table and held the angel shard in her closed fist, not from fear, just from habit. The way you carry something that has been part of you long enough to feel wrong without it. Judge Patricia Howard entered the courtroom at 10:02. She was 60 years old, silver-haired, with the face of a woman who had presided over too many cases where children paid for adult failures to have any patience left for performance. She sat down. She looked at the file. She looked at Ryan. She looked at Catherine. She looked at Linda Garrett on the other side of the room. She looked at Lily. She held Lily's gaze for a moment, not unkindly, just steadily. The way you look at something you are assessing honestly. "Let's begin," she said. Catherine presented the case in 18 minutes flat. Clean record. Stable employment, 15 years continuous. Home assessment passed. 3 character references, all unimpeachable. Full cooperation with the department throughout the process. She presented Dr. Reyes's written statement about the consistency and quality of Ryan's presence during Lily's recovery. She presented Linda Garrett's recommendation, which Linda confirmed verbally when the judge asked. The state's representative, a young attorney named Graham, who looked like he had been assigned this case yesterday, raised the club affiliation. He said it carefully, like someone handling something he wasn't sure about. Catherine addressed it in 4 sentences. No convictions. Legal association. Constitutional right. Relevance not established. Judge Howard looked at Graham. Is there a specific criminal conduct you're alleging? No, Your Honor, but the association is not a crime, the judge said. Move on. Graham moved on. He didn't have much else. Then Judge Howard set down her pen and looked at Lily. Lily, she said, I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer it however you actually feel. Not how you think you're supposed to answer. Just what's true for you. She paused. Can you do that? Yes, Lily said. Clear, no hesitation. Where do you want to live? Lily didn't look at Ryan. She didn't look at Catherine. She looked at the judge, straight on, with the full, unblinking directness that had been making adults recalibrate themselves for the past 10 days. With Ryan, she said, I want to live with Ryan. Can you tell me why? Lily thought for a moment, not because she didn't know the answer, but because she was deciding how much of the true answer to give. And then she decided to give all of it. Because he found me when I was dying and he stayed, she said. He was in that chair every single time I woke up. Every time. Not because anyone made him, because he wanted to be. She paused. I've never had that before. Someone who just wanted to be there. And I think, her voice was very steady, I think that's what a home is, not a place. A person who wants to be there. The courtroom was very quiet. Judge Howard looked at Lily for a long moment. She looked at Ryan. Ryan was looking at the table, jaw tight, and his hands were flat on the surface in front of him, and he was very clearly in the process of maintaining composure by considerable effort. Mr. Cole, the judge said. He looked up. This child has identified something that a lot of adults spend their whole lives looking for, Judge Howard said. Are you prepared for what it means to be that for someone? It is not a temporary thing. It does not end when the paperwork is filed. It is every hard night and every school morning and every moment when she tests you and you have to choose to stay. She looked at him steadily. Are you prepared for that? Ryan looked at Lily. Lily looked at him. And in the look that passed between them was everything that had happened since mile marker 38. The ditch, the pool table, the chair, the blue room, the 6 days, all of it compressed into one clear and mutual understanding. Yes, Ryan said. Judge Howard picked up her pen. She signed the order. She set it down. Temporary guardianship granted, she said, pending full adoption proceedings, which I am expediting given the circumstances. Mr. Cole, she is in your care. She looked at Lily one more time. You picked well, young lady. Lily looked at the judge. I know, she said. Catherine grabbed Ryan's arm in the hallway outside the courtroom and squeezed it once, hard, and then let go and became professionally composed again. Bull, who had been sitting in the back of the courtroom and who nobody had tried to remove because nobody had particularly wanted to be the person who tried, clapped Ryan on the shoulder with a hand like a cinder block and said nothing at all, which was its own complete sentence. Lily walked out of the courthouse holding Ryan's hand. She walked down the steps into the January cold of Billings, Montana, and she turned her face up to the sky for a moment, eyes closed, the cold on her cheeks. Ready? Ryan said. She opened her eyes. Can we go see Rivet? She said. He's been waiting, Ryan said. I told him you were coming. You talk to your dog about me? Every day, Ryan said. He's very informed. She laughed, that same real, unguarded laugh, the one that still surprised her when it came out, the one that sounded like something being set free. They walked to Bull's truck. The city moved around them, ordinary and indifferent, and entirely unaware that something had just been decided in a courtroom on the 4th floor that would matter for the rest of 2 people's lives. On December 24, 2010, exactly 1 year from the night Ryan found her, the adoption was finalized. Lily Mae Cole stood in the kitchen on Maple Street and watched Ryan hang a new ornament on the Christmas tree. A glass angel, hand-blown, wings spread wide, whole and perfect and strong. And she said, "It looks like the one Grandma gave me." "It's meant to," Ryan said. She took it from him and turned it in her hands and hung it herself, at the top where it belonged. "Thank you," she said, "for driving down Route 11. Ryan looked at his daughter, at the girl who had walked 1.25 miles barefoot in a blizzard and held onto a broken piece of glass because some things you do not let go of, and who had turned out to be exactly that kind of person in every way that mattered. "Thank you," he said, "for holding on. Some people spend their whole lives waiting for a reason to stay. Ryan Cole found his in a ditch on Christmas Eve, and he never drove past anything again without looking, because he had learned, in the most permanent way a person can learn something, that the thing that changes your life doesn't announce itself. It just waits in the dark, holding on, hoping someone will stop. He stopped. That was everything. That was enough. That was the whole story."